Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Hey, what's happening, Rush Nation? It's Monday. I'm back. I took some time off, much needed time off today during the season. It was a bit of a no-no, but do you know what? I needed it. It's been a long time break, long time without a break properly. So I don't regret it. I had some great time with my family and much needed. So, but it's good. I'm recharged. I'm ready to go. Second half of the season is we're in week 9, so not long until the fantasy playoffs begin. Just another 5-6 weeks from now. And we've hit a critical point of the season now. So with the announcement of that, I'm going to announce that from now until the rest of the season, I'm going to do a new show here on the network, which is Strategy Points. And it's going to be a really short-ish podcast every week, just talking about strategy plays for the rest of the season. It's not all going to be about players. It's going to be about some of it's matchup play. Some of it's going to be just in between stuff. But it's going to be about roster management, roster construction. It's going to be the stuff the intangible stuff. So not just necessarily about, oh, well, this player is better than this player. It's actually about lining your rosters up to succeed and looking ahead to the playoffs and which teams have got good matchups, take advantage of, etc. And all those sorts of bits and pieces. So lots of interesting stuff. Got some great feedback. I did a sort of one-off show a few weeks ago, so I'm going to start doing that weekly. But I'm going to deep dive it even more in the Patreon cast. So reasons to subscribe to the Patreon is if you really like the strategy points pod I'm going to do, then we're going to do even more in more deep dive on the Patreon cast. So tune in there and you'll get a lot more the strategic plays, strategic points of view going forward. So check that out. I'll be dropping it every week, so make the most of it. 'Cause I just find the matchup show is a really hard show to do to make it interesting. Without, the feedback I kind of got from people was it's really useful. I really enjoy it, but it's hard to follow. And I was like, I get it. So actually, the strategic points should be a bit easier, and better to use. And rankings kind of do what the matchup show does. So there's that too. But we're here to talk about waiver wire. So let's just quickly go through waiver wire. It's not a great waiver wire this week. So start at the quarterback position. And the 2 quarterbacks really you need to know this week are Sam Howell, who is 45% owned, and then Will Levis, who is less than 2% owned. So Sam Howell, 45% owned, is the most common owned, I think, of all the fantasy backs left. However, having said that, the one thing I'll say about him is this: you know what you're getting, and people are really excited about the newness. People are going to be really excited about Will Levis. It's like, yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense, but at the end of the day, it's not just about. It's about you know what you're going to get with Sam Howell. He's had 6 great weeks, 2 really bad weeks, and yeah, that's really annoying. But ultimately, that's going to be part of what happens. But actually, when we're looking at what we're going to be, you want forecastable matchups, and I know that it's a difficult matchup for Howell, but he had a great, had a difficult matchup this week, and he absolutely smashed it. So I would just say this: that I'm not too worried about the matchup here. I think Sam Howell for me is the guy I would want to own, the guy I want to take going forward. So he's the one I would be looking to put all the information on. So go with him. I think he's definitely going to be your best bet. But Will Levis, he excited people. 4 touchdowns, great debut. How sustainable is that? How many times have we seen someone with a debut then not kick on from there? It's a really tough situation if you're Kirk Cousins owner because you've lost a quarterback for the season now. Waiting for that to be confirmed, but it's likely going to happen. So Sam Howell's worth a couple of percent fat, but Will Levis a bit less. But I think people will go for Levis over Howell, but I would go with Howell. Personally, that's where I would go. Running back position, there's a few that you can kick on to. I have to own a loss here on Democado. I said he's not a thing. He's not a thing. He's not a thing. I've said that about 5 or 6 times. He is a thing. 37 carries in the last 2 weeks, 20 this weekend against Baltimore. At the end of the day, he is a thing. He's going to carry the ball lots. He's the only show in tow. They're a run-first offense. We don't know what's going to happen with Connor. And at the end of the day, yes, it's a difficult matchup coming up, but ultimately, Demercado is going to be a fantasy start-worthy play this week. So you got to pick him up. He's going to cost you 10-15% of fab, and it is a short-term play. But if you need wins, if you've got 4 or 5 losses on your record, you're going to need to pick him up. That's the bottom line. If you need to start, if you need someone to plug in this week, you're going to have to pay up and get Demercado. You might not get long-term value out of him. You might get long-term value out of him. We don't know what is going to happen with James Conner. So just that's one definitely to use to pick up and play. The other one is Darrell Henderson. He has a slightly better matchup this week, absolutely, against the Packers. It's a great matchup. He's going to get the ball slightly less, but in the PPR league, he's going to get that receiving work, and that is what's key. 3 or 4, maybe even 5 receptions at the weekend, 50-odd yards. He's going to get that receiving work, but only 12 carries on the ground. So less. Royce Freeman is sort of there taking a few touches here and there, but ultimately, Demercado or Henderson, whichever way you want to skin the cat. Henderson has a better matchup. Demercado is going to get better volume. So that's how you kind of have to view up which one over the other. Both of those worth sort of the end 15, maybe even 20% of your remaining fab to get him. Couple of other options here you can look at here from a running back perspective. Be less optimistic on Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet is a really interesting buy because I would say right now this is the last point that you can get him quite cheap. But talk about him on the Pro Football Network Waiver Wire show, which I did earlier today with Carl Yates and Derek Tate. Definitely do check that out. We go into a lot more plays and a lot more depth. So definitely go and check that one out. But I would say here with Charbonnet, he outsnapped Kenneth Walker, 31-24. So ultimately, what you've got there is a player that's ascending, and I think we all know Seattle are going to make the playoffs, barring something catastrophic to injuries. So they're going to rest Walker more, and I think you're going to see Charbonnet rise up a little bit. And I think there'll be more. I talked about it all season. I thought at some point there'll be this line of demarcation where Charbonnet is going to get a role, and I think we're going to see this in the second half of the season. So I like adding Charbonnet here for if you can get it for less than 10% of fab. I think great. Other 2 ads I would consider: Tajay Spears, still under 50% owned. I don't think Derrick Henry gets traded. I've said this over and over again. I still don't think he gets traded. But Tajay Sharp, I think, is going to be a thing. So he's a flex-worthy play with handcuff upside, full ability to be a top 15 back if something happens to Derrick Henry. Given his age and profile, that could happen. So Tajay Spears, worth adding. The other back worth adding, Rico Dowdle, will talk about this. Tony Pollard, 3 of the last 4 weeks, has not hit 10 fantasy points. That's a concern. That is a real concern. So expect Rico Dowdle maybe to start to rise up here a little bit, maybe get a bit more of a role. So again, I think he's a good stash hold play for sure. So definitely lock in on there. Some wide receivers to talk about here that you can add: Josh Reynolds. Talked about him many times, his connection with Jared Goff. It's a good one to have. They have a connection. I would look at him as someone who is definitely sort of trending. He's had 3 top 36 wide receiver finishes this season. I expect that to continue to get a few more. He's got a great matchup after the bye against the Chargers, who are giving up the most points to fantasy wide receivers. So you can get more bye now. No one's paying attention. No one's going to add him. And then if you've got week 10 buys, you can slot him in your flex. He'll be a flex where we play in week 10. Short-term option with potential long-term fantasy upside as well. I like adding him to my rosters. I've talked about Michael Wilson an absolute ton. He's still available in over the majority of leagues. Michael Wilson is going to be a great add now. He's still getting 5 of 8 weeks. He's had over 50 receiving yards. He's getting he ran the most amount of snaps he has done all season, 80+% of routes run on snaps played. And then on top of that, we've got Kyler Murray waiting in the rings. We know he's going to come back in the next 2-3 weeks. So this is a good time to buy Michael Wilson cheap now. And then when we get Kyler Murray back, he's going to be even more fantasy viable because we already see that the talent is there. He's getting targets. He's getting usage. And they're a run-first team now. That will change when Kyler Murray comes back. So buy Michael Wilson now while you can. He'll be very, very cheap. He's not quite on enough people's radars. So Rashid Shaheed is a really interesting one. So he's the ultimate definition of a boom bust. I said with Kyle Yates earlier. In fact, Kyle Yates' words, not mine, but he is. He's had 2 weeks where he's finished in the top 6 of fantasy scoring, and then weeks where he's finished in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. If you're trading in a matchup, Rashid Shaheed is a real game changer. So he's someone that you can plug into a lineup where you're projected to lose by 20 plus points, and you need a potential 20 plus week receiving week from somebody. These roster clogs, these sort of gambits, even players talk about Josh Reynolds, is not going to get you there. But he's that ultimate true throw it into the wind play. So he's got to be owned more than he is because he's got that fantasy winning week upside. And there aren't many players on the waiver wire that do. The risk you have is that he can put up virtually no points. So he's got a good schedule coming up. He will have opportunities to have, again, top 10 weeks. It is an absolute punt when you play him, but that punt can pay off. It's paid off twice already this season. So 25% of the time, you've had a league-winning week or a matchup-winning week out of Shaheed in your flex. So Jaden Reed is in the ascendancy. I put him in my Fantasy Pros column. Great matchup, and that was exploited. Led the team in receiving yards, but he is in top 5 wide receiver in red zone targets this season. That is going to continue. He's clearly their funding targets to him. They buy into the talent. They buy into what he can do. Jordan Love has a relationship with him. Jaden Reed is someone that has to be added. All these guys are worth anywhere from sort of 2%. Jaden Reed, I think, is worth 5 to 7% of fab. I think he's well worth an add this week. And then lastly, another guy to target now is Demario Douglas. He's going to be the guy in New England now with Kendrick Bourne out for the season with an ACL. That has been confirmed. Douglas is going to be a flex play moving forward every single week because he's going to be the guy getting the ball in New England with potential top 24 upside on volume alone. So, he's one to definitely watch out for. Tight ends, there's a couple. You can definitely pick up Logan Thomas if he's still available. He's going to be a top 10 tight end for the rest of the season. But the one to get is Trey McBride. Trey McBride had 14 targets, 10 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown against Baltimore. Great performance. He's going to be the guy you want to get going forward. We've seen already Arizona have had 5 matchups where their tight ends have received 10 or more targets. So it's a really, really good matchup. He's matchup proof with that volume. He's going to be a top 10 play for the rest of the season moving forward as well. So he's definitely a must to add priority if you're looking for tight ends in your league. And then the DST stream of the week, believe it or not, is going to be the Falcons. They're a bottom 8 defense, I think, at time of recording. It doesn't matter. They play the Minnesota Vikings, who are going to be in a right mess, unfortunately, due to the injury of Kirk Cousins. They're not going to have enough time to bed in a new quarterback this week. So they're going to have to ride with Jalen Hall. We're looking at a 5th round pick who is effectively an afterthought. He was the QB3 on this roster. He's now been promoted to the QB1 for at least this week, maybe even longer if they can't get a trade done. So, or a free agent signing. And even if they get one done this week, I doubt there's going to be enough time for that free agent to come in or that trade to come in and earn the job this week. So I expect the Falcons to absolutely decimate Hall and the rest of this Minnesota offense and devour them, and there's going to be picks galore. So that's my matchup. The other one is the Rams. They've got the Packers. Definitely pick them up. They're worth a play this week as well. That's going to cover it. I'll be back for the flagship show. I'll be back for the Strategy Points podcast this week. Tune into all the other shows, Fast Action Friday, the Dynasty shows. Tune into absolutely everything we've got across the network. Check out my column on Fantasy Pros, which drops every Friday. Check out all my work on PFN that drops every Sunday. Check the Patreon. There's going to be some great Patreon content going, especially with the podcast coming. So do check that out as well. But appreciate all of you for tuning in. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Thank you so much for all the messages I get of support and everything else. Massive appreciation to everybody in the community. Hope everyone is having a good season so far. Let's go and win some ships. And until then, Rush Nation, don't forget, as always, keep rushing.